Okay, this is the third podcast episode of the week. I thought I'll get started with a few of these podcast things just to get a little bit used to them. I'm going to talk about three things that all deserve possibly their own video. And I've covered all three of these topics quite regularly over the last couple of months. We're going to start with the FIFA World Cup and my views on what to expect. It's a month away. Players are still coming down injured. We've had a lot of injuries in the last couple of weeks towards the tail end of the season, such as Oxlade-Chamberlain and Dani Alves, for example. That's two players who would have otherwise been dead certain to probably start the opening game for both respective countries they play for. Both have had knee injuries on their ACLs. Very similar injuries as well. That is an issue. We haven't even got to the friendlies, the pre World Cup friendlies that come in the next couple of weeks, and we're having players drop out through injury. This is going to mean a lot of unknown players may get an opportunity, or lesser known players may get an opportunity in their various national sides for this World Cup in Russia. There's other issues at this World Cup, injury aside, so more players can get a chance. That could be interesting. That young players or fringe players can burst onto the scene. I think as World Cups go, they've been actually the scoring rate has gone up. Apart from South Africa, the scoring rate is generally going up. The scoring average is going up, partly because more teams are playing than they were 20, 30 years ago. And the quality of players improved in certain aspects, if not others. I do think overall we're overcoaching the players. But I'm looking for this to be a very high scoring tournament. Very high scoring. I would be surprised if it was a cagey, low scoring tournament. I think fans want lots of goals. We've seen in the Champions League some high scoring knockout games that are insane, where teams just go for broke and don't hold back. And we've seen it in league football as well, that teams are just going for broke. Man City have proven they can score a lot of goals, but they concede a lot of goals as well. So I hope that style of play, where just the more free flowing and just cavalier in a way, because fans like being entertained. High scoring games are probably the most entertaining, if not the most stressful, and it's far more fun. And I do think that maybe the quality level of some of these younger players is not quite what it was 10, 20 years ago as well. Some of them are lacking a little bit of discipline, that top level quality that we had with certain world class players. I don't see it so much now. So that's going to be fun. And of course some of the defending is well, really hilariously bad. But that's what I'm looking forward to, is a high scoring World Cup. The issues I have is the VAR failure in the A-League final last weekend, and there's no Australian or English referees going to the World Cup, yet they're two of the three leagues that I'm aware of that have been trialling VAR. The Bundesliga structure has also been trialling VAR, and yes, some German officials are going. That is a concern for me, that out of the three countries that have been trialling VAR that are at this World Cup, only one of them is sending officials. That is a problem. The VAR failure as well, the head of the A-League, Greg O'Rourke, had to give a statement after the game, and he had to apologise, saying, well, it's worked for 99.9% of the time this season. The one game it didn't was the final, and yeah, it was an embarrassment, not only for Australian soccer, as they would call it, for the federation out there, but also for FIFA, because they are relying on this system getting positive feedback from the leagues doing it. Also, another knockback for FIFA is the fact that the Premier League, the richest league in the world, has also delayed implementation for another season. They're still not 100% happy with the system that we've been trialling. And I had concerns that they're doing it in competitive matches rather than in friendlies first, and then slowly phase it in. I think they've gone straight for the FA Cup. They cherry pick the games they're having it. So the Premier League, if the Premier League club is at home in the FA Cup, they get the VAR usage, not if it's a Championship, League One or League Two, which I think is wrong. And they're also forcing the clubs to pay some of the fee towards it when it's an FA and a FIFA and a UEFA, so a governance decision to trial this stuff. Why should the clubs have to be forced to pay for the installation? It's only a couple of extra. It's all the TV cameras that are already at the stadium through the TV company, and one at the side of the pitch. I have no idea. That's a bit flawed to me. So there are issues with also what is the remit, and I'm very surprised that football hasn't asked sports like rugby league and rugby union, where they do have a video assistant referee or a video ref that's been working very effectively for over a decade, almost 20 years in rugby league's case. I'm very surprised they haven't also had discussions with rugby league about what teething problems they had in the early days, what the remit is, like how much of a remit do you give the video assistant referee, because they keep adding little bits, but very slowly they keep adjusting it season on season, the remit that what the video referee is looking for in both codes of rugby. It's the same in ice hockey. They also have a similar remit when it's especially on the goal line, and they have goal line tech, which they've had for years, which again football was very slow to take up. And they also, if there is a coach's challenge, they can refer to the video footage and have a decision. There are flaws with all systems. I'm not saying every system's perfect, but rugby league and rugby union have almost perfected it to a 98%. Or 95% accuracy rate. That's pretty good, because you've still got an official, a human pair of eyes at the other end up behind the camera also looking at it, and it's also the interpretation of the rules. But the difference between rugby, football was the referee's fully mic'd up, even though the refs are, but you can hear in the stadium and at home on TV what the referee and his officiating team are discussing. It also means the players are a hell of a lot more respectful towards the officials in both codes of rugby than they are in football. They get a hell of a lot less abuse, because if you abuse an official in ice hockey, rugby league, rugby union, you're chucked out of the game. You get a very lengthy suspension. They don't do that in football. That's something football could learn from. And we're going to see scenes at the World Cup where there is a controversial decision and the players all crowd round and start shouting and abusing the referee and then waving the invisible yellow or red card, etc., etc., and it is embarrassing. Also, we could discuss the hooligan issue and the hooligan element and the security issues. The mainstream media is doing that to death. We know there's political ramifications between several countries at the moment. Diplomatically, it's not going well between certain countries and the Russians at the moment. This could be a way to build bridges. There could be issues with match fixing. I'm not going to go into that, but it's the actual playing side of things that I think I want to focus on. I have some concerns about, mostly to do with the video assistant referee and injuries for players before they even got to the tournament. And fan behaviour is going to be important as well. If you misbehave out there, you're getting in a lot of trouble. Right, we've covered the FIFA World Cup for nearly 10 minutes. Now we're going to look at the NHL Playoffs, and I've done a lot of videos over the last few days on the NHL and things like that. And as a Jets fan, I obviously want my team to do well. We have got to a conference final. We're playing Vegas. A few Vegas fans have subscribed to my channel, and that is brilliant. Not because I want to have negative conversations with them. I enjoy discussing things with all fans of all sports. That is what this channel is about. And the last few days, we've had a lot of people subscribe. About I think 10 subscribers in the last couple of days have signed up for the channel. And a lot of them over the last 24 hours, and that's in part due to my NHL videos, my NHL fans. Now, I'm not saying they don't like other sports, and I would hope that they would feel free to look at all my content. And you can look at some of my old videos, and I do occasionally, and they're just so bad. They're hilariously funny about how grumpy I was this time last year and how I just dropped F-bombs every 5 minutes. And I basically just, and it evolved very well. I still drop the occasional F-bomb, and it depends how riled up I get. I try and stay as swear-free as possible, but to keep it PG because I want to get remonetized. But the occasional F-bomb is necessary, and there are certain things where I think the majority of people are in agreement when I drop an F-bomb. There may be some F-bombs at this World Cup. I'm not going to promise that I'm going to be a good boy. There may be some F-bombs over this playoff series between Winnipeg and Vegas where I rewatch a match replay that someone posts online. There's a few websites that I look at, or I see the match highlights from Sportsnet or TSN. I may, because I've looked at what gets me playoffs aside of my team. Throughout these playoffs, the refereeing standard for me has just not been good enough. There's no consistency. We've seen some suspensions. Some have been a game, some have been 3. And Kadri was called on the ice for his hit. he got a 3-game suspension. Fair enough. I think we could give that one in the regular season 3 or 4 games as well. So I think that one was a good suspension. There was a couple of 1-game suspensions in there. Then Tom Wilson on Zach Aston Reese he flattens him. But where the point of contact initially is not directly aimed at the head. It rides up, so it's an accidental contact at the head, or is it? Because Ovechkin is also nearby, and I think they're all trying to go for the contact. All 3 players. Tom Wilson just, the angle he comes through, he runs over Zach, he shatters his jaw, there's blood everywhere. But he gets back on the bench, no call, there's no penalty calls, the player is injured clearly, and it appears that Tom Wilson may be laughing at the incident or something that's been said by fans, because fans love trying to get under the skin of Tom Wilson, and he just laughs. And that doesn't look good for TV, and that could be partly to do with the TV director basically going, he's laughing, and it makes it look worse, but he has got a history of dirty hits. Same with Brad Marchand with his licking, but for some reason Brad Marchand did not get a game misconduct for bringing the game into disrepute and poor personal conduct, because if that had been any other sport, he's done. He's off. He's getting done for bringing the game into disrepute. PK Subban with his diving to get the power play in the game 7. PK Subban's got to stop doing this as well. There's a reason why some of these players are actually quite hated. It's not because they're the best. Oh, no, they are very good players. And if you actually just watch them play and they take some of the crap out of their game, they're very good players. They're hard, but they're hard players as well. They're not softies. Brad Marchand turtles a lot, but it's some of their antics that are gutless, and they're not. Some of them are, and Brad Marchand with his licking, he had several meetings with the league, and then they said they didn't, and they did, and he still didn't get suspended for what is basically wrong. I have never seen that in an ice hockey match before. There's agitating, and then there's going past what Sean Avery would do. There's Sean Avery level, and then there's Brad Marchand. There could be a thing called the Marchand rule brought in because of unwanted physical contact after the play. There's face washing with the glove, and then there's pushing and shoving, and dropping the gloves and fighting, and there's licking your opponent and doing some really weird stuff. I've seen players bite and gouge in rugby and football before and get suspended for that, for bites on the arm or the ear or the neck, or they've gouged an eye in a melee. I have never seen someone lick someone before. That takes it to a whole new level of weird. Maybe he's trying to come out. We don't know. PK Subban, again, after he had got that penalty and they scored a goal, and he scored the goal, which really has angered many Jets fans and probably hockey fans all over the place, because he really played for that. He's taking a leaf from football's book in miles, or soccer if you're American and Canadian. He tried to do it multiple times again, and he didn't get called. So they're not being consistent. Okay, he's got away with one, but then they clearly knew they must have made a mistake in giving him that penalty for his embellishment, not penalising him for embellishment. But they weren't penalising for him embellishment though. So he's clearly diving. He's clearly throwing himself. They're not calling it. No consistency there. Also, from game to game, there are some hits that are getting called and other hits that are not. The suspension lengths are varying. There are several guys who got game suspensions. Regular season, where they got 2 or 3, possibly. I think the Department of Player Safety is giving out a mixed message and the refereeing group giving out a mixed message when in the regular season a lot of those would have been called quick on the ice or supplemental discipline very quickly, done. But they're letting a lot of that stuff go in the playoffs. Players have got seriously hurt. We have seen players go off with concussions and injuries because of the lack of consistency. Aston Reese is a prime example of the lack of consistency. Even though maybe Wilson may have not intended to take his head off, he still broke his jaw and wasn't called a penalty on the play. That is an accidental deliberate hit to the head. It's irrelevant. Penalise the player. It will help educate players into possibly getting their technique better in the hit, and also their technique better for bracing for a hit. Stop admiring your pass. The Pittsburgh players like admiring their pass a lot. It's a fast-moving game. I'm not saying taking out the game. I know there are other channels that I watch that solely ice hockey, and no one's saying take contact out of the game. but it's the technique. It's the same in rugby, and I could get onto rugby technique as well. Kids aren't the ones tackling in properly, it's the professionals, and they're getting their tackle technique all wrong. And I could bang on about so and so player basically getting himself knocked out again because he's got his tackle technique wrong, or he's injured someone because he's got his tackle technique wrong. And I'll be banging the drum for months. And it'd be pointless because the kids are being taught how to tackle properly, but they're also learning bad habits from the professionals they idolise, and so then they pick up those bad habits when they get older, and then they get hurt as well. And then the parents, oh, now we must have tackling out of the game. And I'm just like, Christ, the PC brigade's here because a couple of professionals can't tackle properly. It's the same with ice hockey. There are those saying we should take contacts out of youth hockey. Well, here's a problem if you do that. When they develop as teenagers and they get bigger, they're not going to know their own strengths. When they do hit the professional ranks, they're going to kill each other. Plain and simple. It's a flawed argument to say make it touch rules only or non-contact. It is a flawed argument because they don't know how to do it properly from a young age and learn the techniques of how to play safely from a younger age. You take away contact from a contact sport until the age of, let's say, 16, these guys will kill themselves within a couple of years because they're developing physically, they're going to get bigger and stronger, and then they're allowed to tackle, and they haven't had that tackle technique practice for 10 years of youth development, and they hurt each other. Just saying. Completely flawed argument. And the NHL playoffs have been a great thing. Vegas and Winnipeg, no one had them getting into the playoffs. Winnipeg maybe as a wild card. Vegas would have just been competitive, expansion team, etc. Vegas have used the expansion rules very, very well, and Winnipeg didn't give up much in the expansion draft either. I think they gave up Chris Thorburn, and he was traded by Vegas straight away at the draft. So Winnipeg has developed their depth slow and steady, and they were criticised for doing that for many years. It's paying off. Having faith with the GM and the coach has paid off. They've now got a good side that has a very good chance to win the Stanley Cup. I think the winners of Vegas, Winnipeg, will win the Stanley Cup because Tampa have fallen at the first hurdle in the conference final. They lost 4-2 last night, which surprised me because I thought Tampa... It didn't surprise me as such. It's a bit surprising considering that they were far better than Washington in most of the regular season. But those long rest periods they've had could go, as I said, work against them, and they have. Right, now let's go on to my final point of this podcast, and that's Israel Folau and his... he's really, really... Now, I gave him the first time, I gave him the benefit of the doubt because of his religious views, but he did it a second time. He's really on this anti-gay campaign, isn't he? He's really banging the drum for evangelical Christianity, which is I think the most abhorrent form of Christianity, and the most hypocritical form, because in the Bible it does state that the meek will inherit the earth, and the earth will be inherited by the sinner, not the sin-free. Those that are the meek, basically. Even though the Bible does teach that homosexuality is sin, sinners and the meek will inherit the earth is taught in the New Testament. So it's a hypocritical book anyway. I am not against freedom of religion. Far from it. I am all for freedom of religion and freedom of gathering and freedom of belief. But at the same time, there comes a point where there's freedom of view and freedom of speech, and then there's hate speech. And it's getting to the point now where Australia, as a country, has voted for gay marriage and full gay rights that are equal with heterosexual groups. So the LGBT community has got the same rights now in marriage, divorce, adoption, the whole lot that a heterosexual person would have. So he's going against public opinion in his country. And there are those that are supporting him. And I'm just going, okay, right, okay, yeah, freedom of religion, fine. But there has to become a point where he is deliberately targeting a minority group, which for some reason, religious zealots are very, very good at. They say that religion's all about healing and bringing togetherness and faith, and, respecting others, but at the same time they're quite happy while saying those things to stigmatise a group because of their colour of their skin, their faith, their whatever they do, if they're if they are gay, ethnic background, if they're a different sect of that religion as well, sectarianism. They're very, very, very hypocritical. And this is a problem because he's a public figure that a lot of kids will idolise, and what message does that give? It means you can go out and you can bully someone and you can be vile towards someone. Because verbal bullying, which is what he's doing, can lead to physical violence, as I have found out as a kid. Kids can pick on other kids, and then it gets from verbals that kid reacts, then a fight breaks out, a kid hurt, someone gets in trouble, then they blame the victim for being a victim. It's just like, what? No, the kid's defending himself. Um, I think what's going on is he's near the end of his centralised contract with Rugby Australia. He's near the end of his contract with, I think, is it the Waratahs he plays for? And there's rumours that's been linking him for a while now with the NRL, Rugby League, and Super League, so Rugby League in general, and playing possibly Rugby Union in Europe, and possibly a move to the Queensland Reds. There are several options that were open to him before he decided a month ago to go, I know, I'm going to hate gay, I'm going to hate on the gay community, because I'm religious, I think I can get away with it. That's what I don't like, is people using their hatred and hiding behind a religious veneer, where 95% of people who go to that church have no problems with, you know, the LGBT community. They probably have a friend or relative who is, and it's just stupid, really. I've got friends and relatives who are, so I do take a point where I think, okay, you're pushing your luck now, mate. And there's a lot of people. I will be surprised. Rugby Australia have been very wet in this and very soft because they need him. He's their best player. There is the Matt Giteau rule, which was brought in. If you have 60 plus caps for Australia, you can play abroad and still be selected under extreme circumstances. I think the public backlash, if they were to select him, if he was to play abroad, would be disastrous. Australian sport right now is having scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal and needs some positive news, and Israel Folau is doing the exact opposite. This is probably why I think he ends up in the NRL, because the NRL has a lower standard of player behaviour, it seems, because there's so many players in the NRL who, personally, I think should never be allowed to play professional sport after the second or third chance they've had, with various allegations from domestic violence, drugs, assault, drink driving, criminality, general arseholiness, racism, homophobia. Yeah, apparently in the NRL you can do those things multiple times, apart from if you're Todd Carney, and then they might reconsider because he's a special case. Allegations of sexual assault, you name it. You can commit those crimes, be found guilty or investigate for them, but still play in the NRL. Other sports, as rugby union with Sale Sharks and Paddy Jackson have proved, it's a bit harder to get a job even though you've been found not guilty of your crime that you've been alleged to have. But Israel Folau, he's really dividing opinion down under. He's dividing opinion online around the world. Now, it's a shame that his career is he's going to be probably now known for this rather than some of the good stuff he's done. The fact he's played 3 different codes of football, as we would call it in the Australian and European way. He's played Aussie rules, Australian rules football. He's played rugby league and rugby union. All he's got to do now is play soccer, and then he's played all 4, and Gaelic football, and he's played 5 codes there. He's an exceptional athlete who's exceptionally talented. You've got to look at his strike rate as a try scorer in both the union and league. Okay, it didn't work out at AFL. It didn't work out. He at least gave it a go and was willing to try something that a lot of people wouldn't consider if they played rugby league or rugby union for their entire lives, swapping over to the AFL. He did give it a good go. It didn't work out. But on the field, brilliant. Off the field, Jesus Christ, he is going to be remembered for this, not for his skill set and the fact he's a 3 code player. He's going to be remembered for all the wrong reasons. And whoever's advising him is doing a real great job, because the damage has been done, and I don't know if Rugby Australia have actually got the balls to go, we'll have a weaker test side for the World Cup, but we have a code of conduct and you've broken it, or you're too good to let go, we'll do anything to keep you. That's how bad it is. And you've got to look at what happened with the cricket team, with Cricket Australia, with sponsors pulling out and players getting lengthy bans. Cricket Australia showed for years a lack of moral fibre and a lack of toughness, and that's what's happening here with Rugby Australia. They are showing a lack of leadership. They are showing a lack of, everything. They've apparently warned him about his conduct, so he does it again. There comes a point where once, okay, he is religious, we can give him that. 2, this is now downright hatred, and he's using his religious credentials, as we'll say that, as a shield for some very vile views. And the majority of people are against him. There are some that support him. There will always be Israel Folau supporters. I'm not going to say they're right or wrong, but there is a code of conduct for social media usage, and clearly he's fallen afoul of that because he's created controversy, he's brought the game into disrepute, and there's a lot of rugby players who will probably refuse to take the field against him. They will say, no, I'm not playing if he's on the field. I refuse. And that could be embarrassment in Super Rugby and in Test matches for the Rugby Championship. That could be embarrassing when other players say, we refuse to take the field against this guy. We refuse to play against him. We refuse to play with him. And then that leads to a problem. But that's that. We've covered a fair bit in this little podcast. I know it's not the longest, but hey, it's been great fun, and I hope that you've enjoyed it. I've covered 3 different sports here with a few little references to other sports, which is basically what this channel is all about. And yeah, if you are interested in any of my stuff, just check it out. If you've stumbled across this and you've made it to the end of this podcast and you put up with my dreary British voice for just over 25 minutes, I commend you. You get a medal. Yeah, please feel free to like, subscribe if you're new to the channel and you stumbled across this. If you're a regular, place your comments below. I understand Israel Folau is going to be a divisive topic, but I do feel now that I've tried to take a hands-off approach and be a bit more, okay, neutral in this. No, I think the time has come now to go, yeah, there's religious freedom and then there's hate speech, and he's crossed that line now. In my eyes, the line is blurry though, and I will admit that. But I thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.